Hi guys, just something really quick. I was writing my next episode, and while I was doing that, I started thinking about something. All of these new revelations about this mystery subpoena, again, a topic we brought up here way before it became the topic anywhere else, but I've heard too many people giving the New York Times the benefit of the doubt. And you know how I feel about that. I've done quite a few episodes specifically about the New York Times. But I've heard them say, oh yeah, they were probably careful. They're usually careful. I'm sure they asked and I'm sure they were told, oh, there's a subpoena, there's a lawsuit. And it makes me mad. Why? Because it's this simple. Where did you get this information? Blake answers, a subpoena. Next question. Can I see the subpoena? If they had just asked for that, showed it to the legal department, found the deficiencies in it, they would have been safe, but that's not it, because people can say, oh, once they were shown a subpoena, that would be the end of their responsibility. And that could be. But what about this point? They were preparing this article for it looks like 3 months, from October to December. They timed everything just perfectly. They waited until the day after Blake was going to file, what? Her CRD complaint. Why? So they would be covered by this privilege that says that they're free to report on something that's part of judicial proceedings. That leaves a gaping question. Did you guess where I'm going? Why would they have to wait for a CRD complaint to be filed if they believed that there was a legitimate subpoena from a legitimate lawsuit? Why did they have to time it like that? To wait for the CRD complaint. If they believe there's a subpoena, if they believe there's a lawsuit attached to the subpoena, there was no need to do that. And how did they excuse their privilege? Did they say, well, there was a subpoena, there was a lawsuit? No. They said there was a CRD complaint. They said in their documents, it doesn't matter if we started writing it before it was actually filed. Do you remember those words? Because I do. Never in all of those pages of nasty, rude comments did they ever say, we're privileged because there was a lawsuit and we saw the subpoena from that lawsuit, or we were told there was a subpoena from a lawsuit. Never. They used the CRD complaint as their reason for having privilege. So what did Megan Twohey and the New York Times know about this subpoena and this lawsuit? Did they know that a lawsuit existed just for the purpose of a subpoena and that that lawsuit was going to be closed on the 19th, the day before the CRD complaint, so that they couldn't use that lawsuit as the reason for their privilege? Did they know that? Is that why they said we have to have the CRD complaint? Did they know the subpoena that this stuff was hiding behind, that whole suit was closing 2 days before they printed? Is that why they waited for the CRD? Is that why all their documents say the CRD is the basis of our privilege? So which thing did you know, New York Times? Did you know that the lawsuit was fraudulent and was going to have to end on the 19th? And that you were going to need that CRD complaint? Or did you know there was no subpoena and no lawsuit, and that you needed to wait for the CRD complaint? Either way, you're in trouble. Because you were either party to a fraudulent lawsuit, or you took stuff you knew were not under subpoena. So which thing did you know? But here's the thing. There's no way the judge can know what the New York Times knows, unless he hears it from the New York Times. So what does that mean? If Brian Friedman brings this complaint forward, this abuse of process, everything's got to come to a halt until the judge decides what to do about this accusation. He's got to determine whether or not there's abuse of process. He needs more information to sort that out. The only ones that have that information are the New York Times. So guess what has to happen? If he's going to really get to the bottom of this and use all the evidence available to him, he has no choice except to deny their motion to dismiss and remove the stay of discovery and compel them to immediately provide the communications that have to do with this subpoena. Because Justin's complaint is not just about Blake. It's about the article that she had put in the New York Times. So this casts a whole new light on the New York Times. Why'd you wait for the CRD complaint And why did you use in your documents the CRD complaint as the basis for your privilege? Check, New York Times. So a lot of people have asked me, well, why would they dare to do this knowing that they were going to get caught? Why would they risk it all? They knew as soon as they turned this over, that was it. Everybody was going to know. What I think is, so far, discovery has been stayed for the New York Times. Everyone's thinking the judge is going to grant their motion to dismiss and they're going to walk away from this lawsuit. I think what Team Blake is thinking is that when that happens, if that were to happen, that they would no longer be required to turn that subpoena over because the New York Times would be dismissed. And therefore their story to the New York Times would be considered privileged. So maybe they're feeling safe thinking, oh, as soon as the New York Times is dismissed, we don't have to show that to anyone. Hopefully the judge will deny this motion to dismiss and open discovery back up. And then they have to show it. This is Cassidy O'Connell saying stay well and stay tuned.